You can tell me what
Because
I'm
you
gonna say,
are.
I just wanna make sure I'm not breaking the law.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna put in policy, I'm gonna know that I can do that, so, or not, and that's the intent. I mean, it doesn't have to be that one, it could be something else in the future. It was just an example.
No, I know, but it's, to me, it's pretty clear here that do not reference or cite village employees with other express
It's
intent.
very, very clear.
I
I'll
would
give
say
you an
that the
example
answer
of
would be no.
when I would think it would be okay.
Wouldn't we want some sort of carve out for like the village manager, Becky Ewald, wants to share this information? I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of, it's
yeah,
very
it's just-
informational, I think. we
Right,
should-
Without
or
their
the chief
consent.
said, we have a copy that assuages fear, you know, like, I don't, there's some things that, I get what you're saying, you don't wanna put words in people's mouths,
Yeah, that's the.
right? But that worries me just because I see it a lot, like,
Well, when people say,
I
who do I
conferred with the village
contact, who
manager,
should
we
I
do not
contact
have-
about this?
like, I conferred with the village manager and we do not have
And we can't
blah, blah,
say,
blah.
this is who you should
But-
contact Leanne, or contact Bart, or contact Rebecca.
Well, it all should go to Rebecca. But Rebecca, would you be okay if we say,
you say
please
Leanne's in
contact
charge of
Rebecca,
that?
and then we could say that on our personal sites? I mean, it's really not that hard, you guys. Call Rebecca and ask her if you could say, can we please, to contact her. We're a small
I'm
village.
saying I would, if there are instances that I think we shouldn't have to do that, so. I get what you said,
So,
and you agree with it.
can I
understand.
comment on this one?
Yes.
So this was one of the bullet points when I wrote it, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure on that.
Mhm.
And, it was taken on another policy, and actually I think it's the League of Minnesota Cities, and their recommended policy was something that they had too. So for me, this is really great, right? As the communications person, like, my name is associated with it, and like, for me, do I really have a strong preference? Not really. So like, that's kind of the nature of my job and several others, so I get that.
But there's an intent behind it, maybe if you
Yeah.
just say out loud what the intent is, and then that would be a better way to phrase it.
If I remember the context was more about talking like someone posting a blog or like a post about, okay, you use the example of the police chief. So they go on and post like personal comments about the
Or
police
feelings
chief's
about 'em, right.
like performance and et cetera, right? So I can highlight that and see if there, because that for me, when drafting, I think that's the larger concern, which and this is up to you as a board, but I don't think that's appropriate on a social media page. But if you were to make a comment like,
If you're
contact
talking
so and
personally about
so,
someone,
or if it's like a small action like that, there might be a way that we could do that.
Thank you.
So I will highlight that section. I will give that more thought. But if anyone has any recommended solutions, I'd be more than happy to take
also, we
those.
can find
Well, sometimes when and I'm just bringing this up because it's come up a couple of times from the staff perspective, there have been people like advising people to contact specific people on our staff, and that wouldn't necessarily be who we'd advise they contact.
what do you do?
You have to deal with it.
Oh.
Yeah.
no,
Because it's already
just-
out there.
Not you, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
as an elected official, our job is to communicate with the residents.
Mm-hmm.
So let me defend ourselves for a second. They come to us and they say, hey, I have a question about sidewalk repair.
Yeah, I know the sidewalk was big.
Oh, I don't even remember this, so I'm just making this up. And then one of us may chime in, which, if you're being responsive, and say, hey, contact Leanne. It might not have been the right one,
Mm-hmm.
but at least we're responding.
Mm-hmm.
So how would we fix that?
Well, if it, you know,
Maybe give us a list. We talk to residents all the time.
Just call it.
The last bullet on there
Website
says they
or-
encourage you to
Or just
contact the
or-
department or the officials to get to coordinate the
What if-
post.
I'm wondering if we just like, if we do like a referral and if it's just like a department head, I wonder if that would be more okay than like another staff member. That's where if
Yeah,
if you
you're
give me a
right.
little more thought, I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
can find some language that's a nice middle ground.
I like that.
Couldn't we call
Um,
customer service and then they'll direct the person to the appropriate individual? Isn't that part of their
Just-
job at the customer service? Is to field the incoming
Look at the
inquiries and
department
stuff?
I mean, we always want customer service trained that if an inquiry comes in, they know how to direct it.
Yeah, that's
So
what I'm
in
saying,
most
for us
in
to
most cases, if
simplify.
you give, to customer service.
847-2700.
Absolutely. So I just asked, let me review that bullet point. I think I can find a nice middle
Can I
ground
just
based
ask
on comments
if I
here.
call customer service, can they connect me to Leanne or Joel, or do I have to hang up and call
No,
them?
they
No, they would
connect.
forward
They
you
can
to them.
connect, yeah.
Trustee Martin?
Yeah, on the third to the bottom bullet in F, think about if you identify yourself as an employee. How does that work for like, union
Which
organizing?
section are you on?
The third bullet from the bottom above G. You know, the employee's
Oh.
right to, you know, if they have a work gripe or trying to organize or association, do they have rights?
They do.
What is the current, is this consistent with the current
So,
requirements?
yeah, this one, I'm a little more well versed. So basically, if an employee on their personal page have no reference to the Village of Shorewood, they're given a little bit more like rights when it comes to the freedom of speech that. But when they post anything about the Village of Shorewood on their page, like they're a Village of Shorewood employee, because there's in Facebook, if we talk about Facebook, there's an employee section. If you identify you're a village employee, now you have to conduct yourself in a much more professional manner. Because by doing that, there's been cases out there that by that action, you're identifying that you're a representative of the village. And and I have cases that I can share if anyone inquires on that. So that's why I put in that phrase, because I want anyone that's under the village to know that if you identify that, that's the general
So that's
expectation.
consistent. You're
Yeah.
confident
So-
it's
We really have to
consistent.
split out staff from elected officials, but yes.
So quick question, so like on my LinkedIn page, I think I include the fact that I'm a trustee for the Village of Shorewood. Does that by definition then mean that whenever I speak on LinkedIn, this policy would mean that I'm speaking as a
Yes, I
village
think you have to
trustee?
separate staff from, I've said this, employees and elected officials are somewhat different.
Because I definitely am not, it's part of my resume there, but I'm not
Mine too.
speaking as a trustee when I,
Well, there's the-
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I can confirm with Nathan, but I think you could still talk about village business if you do that, and that you're just, you are talking as a representative of the Village of Shorewood if you do that.
so I guess my question would be, do I need to put a disclaimer on every message?
Yes. Oh, not every message.
Okay,
What I think I have later on is, if
Okay,
you
so
do that, there is like in your general description, you would have a disclaimer stating,
the first bullet in that.
Okay.
thanks, Mike. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, first bullet point, personal accounts should possess the following disclaimer: if any views shared on the personal account relate to the Village of Shorewood. The following views
Okay, so-
expressed on this account are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of the Village of Shorewood.
okay, so if I started talking Village of Shorewood, then I would have to put that disclaimer.
Right,
Right.
yeah, just,
Okay.
That's
yeah,
how I
and then
propose.
otherwise, I mean, sort of then it goes back to
And then I have a
the
question.
reason
Trustee.
why it's in there is around professionalism, like what, and that's a judgmental term, it's very hard to, it's subjective, but I think that that's what it's just trying to put out there, is just a kind
Yeah.
of common sense.
Can I just confirm or clarify? Because like, let's say for instance, you were supportive of for sidewalks going, putting that on the part of the general levy instead of assessing. Thank you. So if you were to make that statement, that's not the Village of Shorewood making that statement. If you had that disclaimer, it's clarifying that Trustee Warren is making that statement.
Okay,
Okay, two things. I think I put disclaimer on, first I think three things, that I've always, elected officials need their separate section. To mix them in gets hairy. So staff and village volunteer are a different entity, a different animal. They're appointed or they're employed. But we're elected, so there are things that we're gonna say, because we have constituents who vote on us, and they need to know our opinions on certain issues.
Yeah, I agree with
Okay,
that.
so what I said about disclaimer, to get to that, the disclaimer in here I wouldn't use, this is the disclaimer I would propose to use as an elected official.
Okay.
These are my personal views as an elected official, and may not represent the official view of the village and or the board, the village board and or the village in general. So in other words,
I like it.
right, because
Mhm.
it's different than saying this is my personal opinion and does not represent the village. This is my elected position and, as an elected official.
Can you send me that?
I will.
Okay.
And then the other thing was, it's gonna get a little touchy, but somewhere it needs to state, if you separate them out or if you don't, that it's okay for an elected official to have a different opinion than an official opinion of the village. Because you might be in the minority, you might have voted no, okay?
Right.
Supreme Court does that all the time, I
Right.
always use examples, so it's okay, and you shouldn't have residents coming in and saying, well, is that the official village way? Well, if it's clearly stated, which it hasn't been, but if it was, as my, because our constituents need to know what we stand for. And so that's the same for anyone that's elected. So anyway, somewhere in there, if that can be stated that.
I think as long as you had that disclaimer with it, I don't see any issue
I just
for
feel
you
in
doing
the, as a
that.
policy, I
Yeah.
just feel like it needs to be stated because that is a big, big thing that I've heard over the last 5
Okay.
years, right?
Okay.
And then there's something in here needs to talk about, a bullet point of, you can't talk about pending lawsuits or litigation.
Yep.
You got that?
Yeah, that's, I think, on the last page if people are following along.
And it's confusing because you go community members and staff, and I'm assuming community members is elected officials, I don't know. And then you do personal use, and then you, I don't know, I get confused on who's who. So, but just make sure it's in all of them, whatever sections you have.
It would be, yeah, it's, I think the second to last bullet point in section F. Pages or social media profiles containing language that identifies an individual to be an elected official or village rep may qualify content to open oh no, wait,
In future.
in future litigation.
But is that a little different than don't discuss future
Yeah.
litigation or?
Yeah, that's different.
I did not see it, I did
It's
see
in
something
here.
on there. It says lawsuit.
Yeah, there's
That's
something,
fine.
there's something else, that's not it, that's why I stopped halfway through.
And then child photos, that comes up a lot, so that would be the only other thing that I
Yeah.
would put as not posting. And I think that was almost all the questions, I had one more, and when I find it, I will.
Oh, what was the child photos? I wanna make sure
I don't know how to word that, but everybody on social media is very careful about that, and so.
that if
whatever-
it's someone under 18, that you
You
have
don't post
permission
it.
from.
You can get
It's
permission.
a complicated permission structure.
You want me to add that?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and.
But are we,
But
are
wait,
we
I'm-
saying
No, wait, what
that?
is it?
I thought that was,
It's a California Act.
No, I didn't,
Yeah,
what
but
are we pertaining this to?
is this,
Uh,
in this in
it's
relation
to
to the
that.
village website,
Or
or the
yeah.
village?
No,
Official.
first of all, I mean, they're saying if you put a disclaimer and say on your personal page, this is not village, and you post, you still can't post a child, that's what you're saying, you put the disclaimer, doesn't dissolve you of responsibility of following policy.
I'm not sure I'm following,
Yeah,
because
I'm not-
I'm not following.
That's not,
like, we in our other communication policy had the discussion regarding
Right.
pictures with children and, in relation to like Shorewood Today and all of that stuff. And so I
Those were
would
previously
assume
authorized.
that, hold on, that policy would apply to the village's Facebook page.
that's what I interpreted and that's what I wrote down.
Right.
That if we were
So-
posting a picture of someone under 18, we would need the permission, similar to the other policy that you're
Right.
referencing.
Right.
So, and then are you saying that, so, I mean,
We're just gonna put in the
for
policy.
example, on my trustee account, which I really never use, but there have been some kids in the picture, or in a picture, that I would need to indicate that I've received permission from those parents in that picture.
Well, as of right
Yes,
now,
we're
that's
good.
proposed as a non-official village page, so that would not be subject
Not
to
true.
that.
Unless she does, is she talking about a village issue like crosswalks? It's gonna- And she posts on her personal page, and she puts a disclaimer, I am speaking as a village representative, right? That it applies. The disclaimer would be if she said I'm speaking as myself.
No. Because these parameters are only for village official pages.
So they don't apply to.
They
No,
don't,
no.
they don't apply to personal pages.
What?
That's how I have it written.
Which section?
Okay,
Are we in D, is that which section are we in?
just on official
The-
villages.
This would be section E, so I'd be adding that under guidelines for official village social media pages, that any official pages,
Yeah.
we would be required to get permission if it's someone under the age of 18.
But what if you're
That wouldn't,
speaking as a representative of, say you have a disclaimer,
That's
what's the point of that disclaimer?
about sharing personal views.
About sharing village.
So if you're
your
sharing-
Village, you're speaking.
That
as a
you're,
village
that you're, the
representative.
views that you're expressing on your page are not the views of the village as a whole.
Okay, so you don't put the disclaimer, because now I'm expressing them as a village member here, an elected official for the village,
But you're still not the whole village.
not the whole.
You would still
Okay.
need, you would still need
So I don't
it.
have to follow any of these, as long as I just put a disclaimer, that's all that applies to a page that's not
With
official.
the stuff that we have to follow is under F.
Yeah.
Correct, that would be a personal use, as of right now how it's written.
It's, the
Right.
only stuff that applies to
If
all
you
those.
change, if you changed it where you wanted the village trustee pages as official pages, all of a sudden you go from F to E.
So
Does that make
F
sense?
is for elected officials? No, says employees.
Yes,
But aren't we-
this is, F applies to,
Village employees.
Here are some general
All
guidelines
pages.
for employees and elected volunteer officials when using social media on their
Alright, so
Oh.
this is the
person,
only
it says personal
section,
time, personal pages.
besides the disclaimer, this is the only section that would apply to elected officials. Right?
Social media.
That's correct.
No, section D, it says community members
That's
on
okay.
social media, so you'd also be under D.
No, that's why I asked you if it's an elected, because the titles to me were confusing, as I just said. If you're gonna say community members, we list them as a different person. It's usually village staff or village employees, use that consistently.
I'd be happy to add elected officials then. to the
Elected
title, make it
officials,
more-
and then what are we calling the committee members? Volunteer committee members?
Volunteer
It says
committee members.
community members, so just make sure the terms are all consistent.
Okay,
Even
I can
village
do that.
staff, village employee, just use one. I don't think D applies to us.
well, this, it does if we're posting something on a village page.
But I mean, I'm just strictly talking about non-official pages.
Right, but if we post on an official page,
Oh, I see what you're saying, so but not, okay, but not if we post as individuals.
if we post as, yeah, then that's,
And how do we
then
post to
that's
a village
F.
page?
F.
Comment on it.
If we
Comment
comment,
on an actual village post, okay.
Or post on their, the village's timeline.
That'd be it.
So I had a question about D also,
Okay.
about the village removing comments. I mean, it was my understanding that we're creating a public forum, and, that we cannot remove comments.